Hi, everyone. Welcome to week two of digital forensics and fact checking, COM 294. We're going to do two video lectures for this week. One on fake news, the history of fake news and debunking it. We'll also look at a cool tool called photoforensics.com. It's linked off your syllabus here. There are a couple of documents here in your folder as well, in your week two folder that we'll look at some fake news tip sheets and something called the crap test. Define digital forensics. What is it? We'll go through a little slideshow on that, and then get into the difference between misinformation, disinformation. What is malinformation? Different types of fact checking in real time, articles, multimedia, data-driven fact checking. And then the second lecture video, which we'll have posted here as well. They'll be linked right off these words right here. We'll get into AI a little bit and fact checking stuff that comes out of AI. How to set custom instructions in your large language models to filter out a lot of bad information. We'll give you some of those instructions and show you how to put them in. Also Perplexity, which is a really good AI research tool, and then we'll use it in a little assignment as well. It's a good kind of starter assignment before we get into some of the deeper forensics work on video and audio and images and things like that. So to start out, I want to open up our week two folder and just talk about a few of the things that are in here. The first one is this little fake news tips guide here. We're going to cover these in the slideshow too, but this little graphic's really nice because it covers the things you should do when you see something online. When somebody sends you an article, maybe and you don't know who they are, or you're just scrolling through your social media feed, you always want to read past the headline and check what news outlet published it. Are you familiar with that news outlet? Do you know the author? It's a reporter you're familiar with. Does it have a byline on it at all? A lot of fake news stories don't have bylines on them. They're full of typos and grammar errors. They don't do a lot of spell checking on them. Check the published date and time. Maybe is it an older article that someone's passing off as having occurred today? Look at the links and the sources in the article. Is it hot linking off to background information? Is it attributing information to various studies or sources? Fake news stories don't do that. Look for questionable quotes and photos. We're going to be doing that the rest of the semester. Beware of your confirmation bias, your own confirmation bias. Does the story support multiple angles, multiple points of view in it? Not just your point of view, but maybe a contrarian point of view. Most news articles at least try to do that, but most fake news stories don't. Search it. This is my favorite. Search and see if other news outlets are reporting it. Maybe see a story about a famous celebrity or a sports star, somebody that has died. It's breaking news. It comes from a place like TMZ. Go out and search that person's name in Google News, news.google.com, and see if other news outlets are reporting that and if they're sourcing it. I always look at that. That's almost my first step there. And always think before you share. If you're scrolling through your social feeds, don't just like or send something, share something because you happen to read the post. Go in and look at the story and vet it a little bit. We also have this fake news verification tips, kind of a repeat of this. It's summarized a little bit differently. Think of is this a joke? If it's a not really outlandish story, ask the experts. Library, consult a fact-checking website, which we talked about in week one. Check your biases, check the data. It's just a little different way of looking, different graphic, different way of looking at the sourcing behind the article, and read beyond that headline and get into the story. So I wanted to go over those two graphics that are in your week two folder. Also, evaluate what you find online. This is what we call the crap test. And I'm going to open this up as well. And I want you to read through this, just to hit the pause button and read through it. And the crap test is an acronym for CRAAP. Look at the currency or timeliness. Does the web page state when it was posted? Do the links work? Does the information seem out of date? What is the relevance? Does it truly answer the question you have in mind? or is it dumbed down for school children? Is it too technical for you to interpret it? Kind of, know the audience, with this. So who's it intended for? You go to WebMD and the articles are much more detailed. Authority, can you trust the publisher and authors? We've kind of talked about that a little bit already. Check the about page. I look at that an awful lot. The organization that sponsors the website, who's behind, who's paying the bills, who's behind this website. Is it PR maybe for an oil company that's claiming to be an environmental website and the oil company is actually doing damage to the environment? What does the site's URL reveal about its content creators? I'll show you a little later in the semester how you can search those and see who owns the website, and that can be very telling. The accuracy, is it professionally written or is it riddled with misspellings, grammar errors, and typos? Look at the punctuation. Journalists don't use exclamation points. A lot of fake news stories do. And also the purpose. Why was this information posted? Is it something like The Onion that's trying to make you laugh, or is it something that's more of a realistic news article? And know the difference between fact and opinion. Always measure that. Fact is, maybe something from this study here. 34% of drunk driving arrests in Lancaster County, Nebraska in 2021 were people between the ages of 18 and 24. Okay, that's a fact. It's the statistical research, and usually this would be attributed to, a source, according to a study by the Lincoln Journal and Star. Opinion is young people in Nebraska get a lot of drunk driving charges, it seems. And there's a difference. This is backed up with fact and data. This one, is an opinion, and it's perfectly fine. It might be an accurate opinion, but you don't know for sure. Where something that's backed up with statistics and attribution is going to be much more reliable than information that is not. The difference between fact and opinion. Always be able to identify that. Photo forensics. I wanted to talk about this tool for a minute since it's a digital forensics class. This is one of my oldest fact-checking tools, and it's still very, very relevant. It's got a little guide down here, an FAQ, and a tutorial. The tutorial takes about 10 minutes, but I'm just going to walk you through it and show you how it works. You can cut and paste an image URL in here and hit upload URL or choose a file, which we're going to do, and upload that file. And what this tool is going to do is it's going to tear apart the image, whether it's a JPEG, a PNG file. It takes several different image files, including screenshots of various things as well. And what I'm going to do is bring in this image. We're going to work with this one a couple times this year. It's a Hurricane Sandy street shark. This is some of the worst Photoshop work you'll ever see. It first showed up in 2012 during Hurricane Sandy. It was shared on social media very widely. A lot of people shared it, including some media outlets. And if you look at it closely, you can actually see the water go behind the shark's fin here, the discoloration of the water, just the pattern in the shark fin. And you can see that this was photoshopped in. And this image keeps showing up during various hurricanes. Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Ian. Used to do a lot of trainings down in Florida and, hurricane area. And the reporters all down there, oh yeah, we've seen this image before a million times, So it's kind of funny that it keeps coming back and people keep sharing it as real image, and it's not. So I'm going to load that image in here, hit open. And now it's loaded the image in. It's sitting over here. And then I'm going to hit upload file. And it's going to take a second here, and you're going to kind of see all this stuff over here. What the heck is all this? And, you can click on this. You might notice, the shark and the shark fin kind of disappear. That's because this is a JPEG photo, .jpg, stands for Joint Photographic Experts Group. And the JPEG photo is layered. It was one layer is the background, the other layer is the shark. And when you export a JPEG image out of Photoshop, it flattens it into one flat image. Well, this tool kind of tears that apart and gets into the DNA of the image. And over here, it's got all these different settings. The one that we care about is JPEG percentage. Okay. And this explains it a little more in a little more detail. Metadata is helpful too, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the little tutorial down here explains that once you hit JPEG percentage, If you see a number like 31 here repeated a bunch of times, that tells you that this photo has been layered, that something has been put on top of the base image, which is the background, and something has been added to it. So it's been layered. So all you have to see is a bunch of numbers. Sometimes it's 51, 31. I've seen it 21. It usually ends in a 1. So if the number repeats a bunch of times like this, you know that this has been is a layered photo. You can kind of see it disappear too when you hover over it. Those are two big clues that, if reverse image search or, some of the other tools I'm going to show you later in the semester don't work. This is kind of the very last line of defense, is run it through photo forensics. Another thing you can look at in photo forensics is it pulls up the metadata of the image. And sometimes, social media strips out a lot of the metadata when you share an image over Twitter or Facebook. Social strips us out, unfortunately. Which it didn't, but it gives you just some basic information of it. Typically, if you open one of these in Photoshop and the metadata is all in there, you'll see a cut line, the photographer's name. You can see here that it was edited in, oh my God, Adobe Photoshop CS6 on a Macintosh, a very old version of Photoshop, like back in 2010 to 2012 era. So this image is very old if it was last edited in Photoshop CS6, or somebody's working off a very old version of Photoshop that I don't even think is available anymore. Shows you the image size, so it does give you some basic information, not much. But JPEG percentage is the one that really tells you what to look for. If you see that luminance and chrominance number, applied a bunch of times, that's your clue. And again, the tutorials down here, if you're really into it and want to look at it in a little more detail, that's where you can go to read more about it. But that's what I use this tool for, is to double check and fact check images. And it's kind of like I say, the last line of defense. Let's talk a little bit about fake news. And I'll, by the way, throughout the semester, I'll kind of introduce those tools to you a little bit at a time, so you're not, being inundated with them. But there's a lot of really cool tools out there that you can use to fact check images, photos, videos, and all kinds of stuff. So that's photo forensics, FOTO forensics.com. And I'll drop it. It's in your linked out of your syllabus and off of your tools page too that I showed you in week 1. So let's talk a little bit about fake news and where it came from. We'll also talk a little bit about what is digital forensics. The name of the class is digital forensics. Digital forensics in the broad definition, and if you open a dictionary and look at it or search for it, it's part of forensic science that focuses on identifying and processing and analyzing and reporting on data that's stored electronically, typically on things like cybersecurity. It can involve recovering evidence from computers, mobile devices, and networks. The FBI, the NSA, they really work with detailed digital forensics. But there's also kind of a sub-definition of digital forensics, and that comes from the world of fact-checking, specifically in journalism. Digital forensics and fact-checking involves scientifically analyzing digital media, which we kind of just did with that photo forensics. Videos, documents, we'll do fact-checking documents throughout the semester, and detect AI and plagiarism, as well as metadata to verify the authenticity or detect manipulations like deepfakes and reconstruct the timelines of them and look back into the history of where they came from online. And we'll be doing a lot of that this semester. Google Fact Check Explorer does that. A few other tools do as well. Experts use these tools to uncover the hidden information, such as checking what we call EXIF data. That's what we just looked at in digital forensics. That was EXIF data, the JPEG percentage, and all those other little tabs on that panel up in the upper left. For location, camera details, analyzing image noise patterns and things like that. That's what we were looking at in that when we hovered over the image, we could see the noise pattern of the image. AI tools can be very, very helpful with digital forensics, and we're going to use those. Just as a reminder, this is our checklist that I showed you earlier of how to recognize a fake news story. I've got it both as the graphic and as a text checklist in here, largely for people that may have visual disabilities. This will read them the list off of the slideshow, as opposed to trying to pull it out of the image. This is the reason, one of these tips in here is to read beyond the headline, read past the headline, number one on the list. And this is an example of why you should do that. This comes from my hometown newspaper, the Lincoln Journal Star. And this is a story about a history teacher that has found creative ways to teach history. It's almost like a science class. And if you read through this, you'll see pretty quickly that there's a misspelling in the headline of the Journal Star. Shoes should be school teacher, right? And if you see that and just go into the or comments and make a snarky comment like this guy did, and I love his profile photo. Take him back to school. He's making fun of that misspelled headline. But here's the response, and it's actually from Cody Thatcher, who's featured in this article. He goes, "Shoe is the name of our school, named after Dr. Shoe, the former superintendent of Lincoln Public Schools. There's a history for you. Let's shoe." So I kind of made a fool out of Chris for not reading through and looking at the story. Because you opened up the story and start reading it, you'd see that the name of the school is called Shoe. Dr. Shoe was my superintendent when I was in grade school. He never gave us snow days. Terrible superintendent. So even though it looked like a typo, it wasn't. And that's why you click through and read the story. It just gives you more information. You can confirm things. A little bit about this presentation. Part of this, of what I'm talking about today, comes from Craig Silverman, the editor, former editor of ProPublica now. And he also edited the verification handbook. You're going to see, and hear from him in a video a little later this semester. He works on debunking fake news. That's what he does for a living. I want you to maybe hit pause now and take a second to read through this speech, this quote from a Barack Obama speech. It was right before the end of his presidency. I was thinking it was around 2013. But it was very foretelling of what we would see in 2016 and beyond. So take a minute to read through this. Okay, welcome back. You should be done by now. What he's talking about here was, when the internet first started to become readily available to people with home computers in the mid 1990s, the prices of home computers and laptops dropped. There was more software available to access the internet, America Online, CompuServe, and others provided really cheap 14.4 modem dial-up access to the web. And the thinking was back then was that it would really help bring the world together, that we could understand and have information at our fingertips about other cultures, other people from around the world, and we would become much more of a society of one. And in some ways that has happened. You've got a lot of information at your fingertips now that I didn't have back when I was in college in the 1980s. But I'm not old. And one of the things that he says here, the wildly negative information and conspiracy theories out there has sharply polarized the electorate and made it very difficult to have a common conversation. Man, if you've ever been on social media, your social media, maybe your parents, and seen people fighting on, God forbid, Facebook or something like that about politics, it's just a death spiral. People just, not getting anywhere, name calling, and just really terrible stuff. You see it on Twitter all the time too. And it tends to be, very right versus left. People have their own biases, confirmation biases, and man, they aren't budging. And think about where you go online. We tend to go to areas, discussion rooms, all things like that online that are areas where we agree with the discussion taking place. Very rarely do we go to corners of the internet where we don't like what's being said. Sometimes we do, but not often. So if you're going into a Reddit or a subreddit, it tends to be about something that you're interested in, makes you happy, something you agree with. That's happens quite often, and that's what Obama's talking about here. Talk about types of misinformation, propaganda, and that's politically or ideologically driven. Hoaxes, that would be, April Fool's hoaxes and beyond. Really, it's 365 days of hoaxes this year. Somebody, playing a prank on you online and misrepresenting maybe some information to you. Unintentional versus malicious propagators. Unintentional means misinformation, somebody sharing the information, but they really believe it to be true. They don't know it's wrong. They haven't fact checked it. Whereas a malicious propagator, if someone is sharing it knowing it's wrong. That's disinformation. And then fake news on web and social too. There's also satire. The Onion, the comics, they're typically clearly marked as such. Also, this old study, I leave this up here just because it's so interesting. It's 8 years old now. You're like, why is he showing us an 8-year-old study? But what was interesting about this, it was done by BuzzFeed News. 83% of the respondents cited Facebook as a major news source, felt the fake news headlines they recognized were accurate. So they couldn't tell the difference, 83% between what was real and what was fake. But what's also interesting about this study is look at what people think are news sources. Facebook. Facebook doesn't do any reporting. They're just sharing the information. It gives you a platform to share it. Google News just shares information from other news websites. Yahoo News actually has their own reporters. Then we have a bunch of news outlets here. Then Twitter. Twitter does not employ journalists to go do reporting. Neither does Snapchat. Whereas all these others are news outlets where they have people out reporting the news. The others are just platforms where people share it, but they think of that as their news source. That's very interesting, and I don't think that's changed much, in the last 8 years, sadly. McCormick Foundation, foundation right here in Chicago, supports a lot of journalism initiatives. They posted this really great definition of fake news. Fake news is deliberately false information put out there in hopes of people will believe it. The other kind of fake news is the label that President Trump and others use as part of their assault on any news and news organizations they do not like. So the term fake news actually came from Craig Silverman, who I've mentioned so many times on these videos. He put it out there at a conference one time. Trump's PR people picked up on it and fed that to him. And then anything on CNN or, the Washington Post, the New York Times, that Trump didn't like that was written about him, regardless of, the fact that it was true, he would just call it fake news. That's fake news. Don't believe it. They just make this stuff up. When they're not, they're actually sourcing these stories and have information in them. So that's kind of his PR ploy, his PR strategy to dismiss any information about him that he doesn't agree with or he doesn't like. Fake news defined as it's always 100% false. It's created by someone who knows it's false. It's done for typically economic motive, page clicks, page visits, often mean ad dollars. Sometimes it'll drive a link to an advertising website. Fake news is typically financially driven. Okay, propaganda is ideologically and politically driven. There's a difference between them. This was an interesting quote out of a post in the New York Times editorial page. Tim Snyder wrote a guest post for the New York Times. He's a historian. It's kind of interesting here how he equates a couple of different eras here. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis created the slogan Lügenpresse, translated to being lying press, to discredit any independent journalism that disagreed with their Nazi point of view on any issue. A lot of these were free European newspapers, Spain, a lot of others were attacking, as well as U.S. media. Lügenpresse is what they called it, lying press. Now with the term fake news that Trump likes to throw around, that tactic's been laundered through Trump and is used it hundreds of times in office. The term fake news is actually trademarked. It was trademarked by a couple of radio DJs back in 2016, which was just a brilliant move. I wish I would have thought of it. And they try to charge Trump every time he uses that term, or really anybody, because they can claim it because it's trademarked information. Best $400 they ever spent. It's kind of a funny little twist to this. Propaganda has been around for centuries. This is nothing new, what we're seeing play out. It's just coming to you faster because we have better connectivity now through social media, through the ability to build a website in a matter of minutes. You set up your Medium accounts last week and it didn't take you very long. So propaganda has been around a long time. The pamphlets back in the 1700s ran headlines, important if true. Democrats who opposed Abe Lincoln's reelection spread and leaked false stories about him. They would create little pamphlets and circulate them in cities saying, "Oh, he supports slavery. He gave it in a speech in Illinois, a week ago." Completely untrue. But it was harder to track that kind of information because it wasn't digital. It was printed on paper and circulated hundreds of miles away. These are an example here. This came from a presentation Craig Silverman was doing. The Sun newspaper was running artist renderings of bears living in harmony in a village with humans. I always love this one because it's so incredibly bad. And they had a story on it too. It's just totally made up. So this type of propaganda has been around for years, but the internet and social media kind of changed the equation for us. It comes at you much faster. It's harder to fact check things when all this information is flying at you a million miles an hour. 300 hours of YouTube video are uploaded each minute. More than 500 million tweets are posted today. 8.5 billion Google searches per day. All these other, data, there's a lower barrier of entry. Anybody can register a domain name and set up a website in a matter of minutes. There's also something called pink slime publications that often arrive in the mail. Maybe if you live in the Chicago suburbs or your parents do, Paddock Publishing, Dan Proft has cut a deal with Paddock Publishing, which publishes the Arlington Heights Daily Herald, which is well-respected newspaper in the suburbs. But Proft has been able to create these things called pink slime publications. It was really big during the fall of the 2022 gubernatorial elections. They're back now in 2026 as well. I had a student bring one in the other day to me. My parents got the pink slime paper. And these are, quote, free publications. They're mailed to you, and they look like a local community newspaper, but they're not. And most of them are filled with propaganda stories about, usually they're attacking J.B. Pritzker or somebody that Dan Proft doesn't want to see elected. Pretty much any Democratic candidate for the Senate or even a local election will be attacked in there. And I've got some of these actually in my office that I share with my classes sometimes. And they come at you and they look real. They're laid out like a real newspaper. They look nice, have photos in them, graphics even sometimes. But the stories don't have bylines on them. And they're full of errors. It's pretty easy to see. But some people pick these newspapers up out of the mail and they read them and they believe them. So that's one way that they're spreading information, kind of the old school way, mail and print, as opposed to the internet. Here are some tools for debunking fake news. BuzzFeed News has a lot of resources. Verification handbook that we've talked about. Storiful. You can tweet photos at Storiful and ask them, do you know if this is real or not? Can you confirm it? And their team is fact checking a lot of photos. We'll look at Storiful a little later in the semester, but they'll tweet back to you and tell you, oh, it's real or it's fake. Google image, reverse image lookup, Snopes, some of those other websites we looked at earlier in week one. You're also seeing some warnings that pop up here too. Sometimes in Facebook, you'll see articles that are in there. It says it's disputed by third parties. Before you share this story, you might want to look at independent fact checkers that have disputed its accuracy. You're seeing more and more of this in Facebook and in Twitter as well. Again, misinformation versus disinformation. Misinformation is false or misleading information shared by people who don't realize it's false and typically mean no harm. They're sharing an article on Facebook because they believe it to be true. Disinformation is somebody that's sharing the misleading information to you that knows it's false and is sharing it with you to cause harm by spreading it. So that's the fundamental difference between the two. There's also a third category called malinformation, which falls under a category more of like revenge porn, doxing someone, sharing their private information. So that's kind of a third category. And the difference between disinformation and misinformation is basically your intent to harm. That's the fundamental difference between the two. Again, the ecosystem, it's easy to build a fake website very quickly that maybe mimics a local media outlet. Instead of chicagotribune.com, it's chicagotribune.com and cut off the E on it, or chicagotribune.co. It leaves the M off. I see that a lot with ABC News. There's a lot of fake sites up there, and they're easy to build. You build them in a matter of minutes using WordPress or Squarespace or even Medium. So there's a lot of fake social media accounts too. Look for the blue check marks. Bots that disseminate fake news. We looked at Spot the Troll, which was a very popular tool for helping you learn how to spot these fake social media accounts, particularly Twitter and Facebook. Always remember too the role social media plays. Partisanship is often rewarded over truthfulness, and social media enables this. The more false the social post is, the more you're rewarded with shares on partisan platforms. People share it more because they're outraged or they really agree with it. But typically, you react to something because it makes you either very happy or very angry. And that's what drives shares. Extreme happiness, humor. Hey, I saw this on The Onion today. It was pretty funny. Or something that makes you very angry or it upsets you. And that tends to drive the share culture on all social channels, regardless of platform. It's an interesting thing to look at. This is Silverman's point of view on this, and they've done some studies in this area. Sharing fake news. Occasionally, you'll call up a well-respected news outlet. This is the New York Times online page on their mobile site, and this, scrolling through it was a political article here on talking about the Bush years, George W. Bush years. And I ran across this and I read over advertisement because it's very faint. And I saw Baldwin gone at 58 and saw the picture. I go, oh my God, did Alec Baldwin die? So I clicked on it. It actually took me to a little website that sold furniture. And news outlets have started to get rid of these. They also make the advertisement designation a little bit bigger. But the Chicago Sun-Times used to have these all over their front page, but they've slowly started getting rid of these. But you'll still see them around from time to time. I'll see them in my Facebook feed, stuff like that. And you click on it, and it's something that's a website that's trying to sell you something, as opposed to an actual obit or a news story about Alec Baldwin dying. So as of March of 2026, he's still alive. If you see a friend sharing fake news, what do you do in this situation? How do you handle it? Maybe it's your grandma, your cousin, your uncle, a family member. The approach to this, you need to be very careful with it because you can go into the comments and just, attack the person, but that's not a very nice thing to do. Debunk the idea, not the person. Do it via DM, email, text, phone, or even in person. Let the person know, hey, I've done some fact checking on this, and this image you're sharing of Trump meeting with the Pope, it's not real. It's just bad Photoshop here. So just explain it to them in a very clear way and say, hey, you might want to consider taking this post down instead of attacking them in the comments, especially if it's a friend or something like that. Yeah, I'm telling you, I've seen some of my friends from high school get into bitter battles on social media over political topics. So I've got a link out of here to a video about how to address this. It's a short video. You can watch it. It's optional. So you can find these slides in our week 2 folder. Take a look keep an eye out too for clickbait headlines. This was one that I spotted. I could not believe this. NBC News would post this. If you read this headline here, this was right at the start of the pandemic. 70-year-old woman dies at California vaccination site after being inoculated. But if you read the subhead here, thank God they put the subhead up here in the quote from the LA Department of Public Health. Her death has nothing to do with the vaccine. So, she died okay. I mean, that's not really, this is on the front page of their website. But the death had nothing to do with the vaccine. So, clickbait headline. It's hoping people will read the first headline, click on it. And this, respected news outlet that has done this. So again, the tips for spotting fake news kind of expanded off that initial list we talked about earlier. Does it make you mad? Does it only showcase one side of the story? Is the author's name missing? Journalists get byline. How's the writing? Is there grammar, spelling, punctuation errors? Is there a lot of all caps and exclamation points? Those typically aren't used in journalistic writing. Always click on that link and read the story very closely. Check for the sources and attribution. Are other people sharing it? If it's shared on social, check the comments and hashtags. They can lead you to other stories and comments about it being fake. A lot of times, I'll open up a Twitter post or something. I'll see the commenters are, tagging it as being fake and put a link off to the accurate information, website. Typically, it's a news website. That's it for what we were talking about with fake news and detecting fake news. Always be skeptical of information. Journalists, by nature, we're skeptical of information we see, and boy, you really need to do this when you're working with digital content of any kind. So that's it for this video. We'll get started on the other video in just a minute.